Example 2, write in rectangular form. Write y equals 2t and x equals t squared plus 2 in rectangular form. Now, rectangular form means we have just x's and y's, no t's. And so to do this, we're going to use an age-old method from Algebra 2 and Algebra 1 called substitution. What we can do, if we want to eliminate a variable, one of the ways you learned how to do it in the past was substitution. You also learned like elimination and things like that. But what we're going to do is we're going to use substitution. What we need to do is solve for the variable t. Now, I like to try to leave this equation as is because normally when we write rectangular form, we write in the form of y equals. So if I solve this one for t, I can just substitute it in right here, and I'll already have y equals. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to choose this equation. Not that you have to, but I'm just going to. I'm going to solve for t. So the first step would be to solve, or to be to subtract 2. I do that. That goes away. I have x minus 2 equals t squared. Finally, how do we get rid of a square? You take a square root. But remember in mathematics, anytime you have a square root that's not originally there, you need to put a plus or minus with it. That's anytime you have an even root, I should say. So this root is even. It's a square root. It's a 2. So you do plus or minus in front. Now we know what t equals. T equals plus or minus the square root of x minus 2. Now we're going to take this and plug it in over here. So I take my equation, which right now is y equals 2t, and instead of putting t, I'm going to do a parentheses followed by this right here, which is plus or minus the square root of x minus 2. To solve this out, I would multiply. Now this, you do not distribute into a square root, so I'll just move it on the inside right here for my final answer. That would get moved right there in front of the plus or minus. So my equation would be y equals plus or minus 2 times the square root of x minus 2. Now, let's say that you wanted to solve this, and you wanted to solve for the other variable. You just thought it would be a lot easier if we found y equals first. So here, you could do it that way as well. What you would do is you'd come over here with the y equals 2t, and we, again, are going to solve for t. So it's easier, this one, to get t by itself by just simply dividing by 2. That goes away, and now we know that t equals y divided by 2. So then you would take this, and you would substitute it into the other equation. So I would have x equals, instead of a t, I'm going to replace that with y over 2. Quantity, let me change this to the correct color. Y over 2, quantity squared, plus 2. Or plus, I'm sorry, 2, not t, plus 2. There we go. Now, when we square a fraction, you square the top and the bottom. So we have that x equals y squared over 4 plus 2. This right here is basically in vertex form, what we learned with conic sections. It's a parabola because we have x as a single variable and y is squared. And so if we wanted to use this for the calculator, just as this would be a parabola, it'd be a positive square root and a negative square root, which would make a horizontal parabola. This, you could actually type in the calculator as 1/4 y squared plus 2. Let me show you. This will be a final check just to make sure we got the right answer. So I'm going to graph all of these just to show how we got the right answer. Let's go back to the start, and we'll graph what they gave us. So on Scratchpad, I'm just going to clear it by pressing Doc B, go back to graph. The first thing they gave me was the parametric. And so the equation was 2t for y, oops, 2t here. This equation was t squared minus 2, I believe. Let me go back and check. No, plus 2. And on the time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it from negative 6.28 to positive 6.28. Not that you have to do that, but this will give me both sides of the parabola. So there's a parabola. Now the first answer we had was, oh, I'm sorry. Graph entry, it was a function. And so we had the positive of 2 square root of x minus 2. And we also had with it the negative of 2 square root x minus 2. Notice how these make the same picture. Those make the exact same picture. And then finally, we also came up with one more solution, as if we solved a different way. We'd go to equation, choose parabola, and it was in standard form, which is like this form, or you could use this one, doesn't really matter. I'll choose vertex form. We had the number in front that we wrote as 1/4. I don't know why my calculator's messing up on me. There we go, 1/4. There was not a shift with y, so I'll plug a 0 in here. And then we had, finally, at the very end, a +2. So we'll put +2, hit enter. You can see all of them give me the exact same graph. So we did do this correctly. Now I have one for you to try. You can use any of those techniques to solve. You can use substitution. You could graph and check which graph matches. You can do whatever you need just to make sure these two match.